Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome cinematographer Adolpho Veloso, ABC, AIP, who joins us to talk about their work on train dreams. Adolpho will talk us through the creative decisions made in capturing the beauty of the story with the natural light. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Adolpho. Hi, Adolpho. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We're here to talk about Train Dreams, which has come out recently on Netflix. I must say, what a film. Honestly, what a film. It is incredible. It also destroyed me. It captivated me. And I didn't want it to end.
Well, first of all, sorry for the destroying part, but thanks for all the kind words. It is indeed, I think, a very special movie and very emotional. Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. I think sometimes it's really hard to describe that, like, you're watching somebody's life but you're watching it through such a romanticized version of it, and I don't know, it's just so nice to see, and it's just such a different change of pace of what's sort of come out recently, and it's a very beautiful film to look at as well.
Well, that's very kind again. Yeah, I feel it's somehow a very contemporary story, even though it is set like 100 years ago. I feel like there's a lot of aspects that struck with me when I read the script, and I feel like it probably translated well into the movie. But it is full of themes and things we can relate to easily nowadays.
Yes, and I can imagine, like, when you're reading something, because this is also based on a novella, that, like, you're reading it and you probably get images in your mind, but then you have to start with certain research because it's set in a certain time period. Where do you begin when you're breaking down the script, and are there anything that you look in your research in particular to sort of capture the feeling and moment in what is written?
Well, to be honest, like all the first times I read the script, I'm not even thinking about the visuals of it. Like especially on this one that Clint was sending me his early drafts, I was always just like reading it as almost like as a story and not trying to figure out how to shoot it or how it was supposed to, and just trying to feel the story and like giving back to Clint what I was thinking just story wise without not even thinking about how to translate that into images. And then I feel like once that story and that script settles with you and your brain and your mind kind of becomes part of that, then I think it's the time to actually understand how to translate that into images and how to figure out the visual part of it. And I think for us it came a lot from like whenever we were reading it, it just felt like, especially because the script already was kind of out of order, like it wasn't necessarily chronological, and there was the voiceover, and it felt almost like a tale sometimes, but also it's like these memories of this person and feels very intimate, and we just wanted to make it as grounded as possible. So we were looking at images from the time period, like actual loggers from the 1920s and all this stuff. I looked a lot at Dorothea's Lange's pictures from the Great Depression, which is roughly the same era. But I feel like it was more just trying to find the rules, somehow visual rules that we liked that could translate into the sentiments of the movie. And the main one being the memory aspect of it, like that idea of like everything coming from with a memory quality, and that's why we decided to kind of go back to still photography, aspect ratio, and language to evoke that memory lane somehow.
Yeah, and I feel like part of it of when you're out logging, you have the nature aspect of it, and everything looks very lush and green, and it's always constantly sunny. But then when you go to his family life aspect, it feels slightly dreamlike, and it's always when you're outside, it's always dusk, and
Mm-hmm.
you get like a different sort of feel to it. And again, it looks beautiful because you have, the twilight hour, and I can imagine it's very difficult shooting those scenes because you're so like, just get the camera set up, let's go, 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 because we don't want to lose light here.
Yeah, we really wanted that feeling for the cabin and for his life with Gladys and the daughter. We really wanted almost like when remembering those things, he's remembering it in a more magical way, almost like too magical. And it's a very sweet memory. So we wanted almost all those scenes to have that quality light wise. So whenever they're outside is almost like the whole time sunset or blue hour, golden hour. So that magical memory somehow stays with him in a sweet way. So we planned a lot. The good thing is that we were actually shooting on location, so we could be inside. I mean, Alex, the production designer, did an amazing job building that cabin on location, so we could actually just like be inside the whole day and then just pop out when lights fell. That worked for our concept, but also when we went to the woods, it's almost like it felt like that memory lane could be a bit sharper somehow and less magical necessarily. There is some magical moments and there is some elements to it, but it could be less of that. We could be like they're also protected by the woods and they're inside that, but there are moments where we were just like, okay, they wouldn't be on this high sun working right now. They would like stop and go somewhere with shade to have lunch or whatever. So we have that scene in the beginning of the movie, for example, where they are inside that kind of tunnel, that cave-like tunnel, having a break. And I feel like it's just like also like going to, okay, that's what they would probably do back then, and just trying to be as naturalistic as possible and grounded, but at the same time know that we were trying to evoke that memory lane and how we remember things in a different way. Even like the camera movements are a bit different. It's all very fluid at the house, and going back to what you said about like those short slots of time to shoot it. But then when we were shooting with them at the cabin with Felicity and Joe and the kid and the chickens, whatever, everything was so all of those moments are very spontaneous. They were almost all of them just like improvised. So it was just basically like, okay, we have 30 minutes here left. Let's just get something that was not scripted and let's get like beautiful moments. So it was just like kind of bonus stuff that we knew we needed, so we were trying to schedule around to have those times too. So yeah, it is a bit of a rush sometimes, and let's go, but then also like everything just suddenly works, so you end up with more than you actually need.
I think as well, like part of it is when you're, I can imagine that in the planning process, you kind of think about what you would get on the day, but then when you have those time limits and you're working with people who are already in character and know what they need to do, because you've got people like Joel Edgerton, who's also a director and producer, so he probably understands like, time and what needs to be done on set. And then also Felicity Jones, who's been around a long time as well, so they probably know what they want to improvise. But I can imagine then once you add a child into the sort of element of it, it's very difficult because
Yeah,
they're so young, it's so unpredictable. And I feel like there's one scene that feels like it was slightly unscripted, and that's when she throws the into the stream
yeah,
the I think the cup, and she just says bye bye. and you could have that sort of moment where I think as an actor, you could have that moment where you're like, oh, you've ruined the scene, or you could just play with it and just be like, yeah, bye bye. Oh dear, oh no, childlike play and sort of show the different side of the character.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about two spectacular actors. Like, honestly, both Joe and Felicity are amazing every single moment they are on set, and especially around those elements that were like more like kind of uncertain, like the baby or animals, etc. They were just like going with it, and whatever they would give them, the kid or the animals, whatever. Both Joe and Felicity just did such an amazing. It was actually the most fun things to shoot because it was always like a surprise. We never knew what was going to happen, and sometimes we had scripted moments with the kid that the kid was supposed to be happy, for example, but the kid was just crying, and then what do you do? And then I think that's the brilliance from Clint also of like, okay, this is not gonna work the way we wanted. It's a kid, it's a 2-year-old. She's never gonna do what we want. We can be frustrated here for hours trying to get something out from her, but let's just go with it. Let's improvise. Let's make the scene become that. And a lot of those beautiful moments come exactly from what you said, like things that not necessarily were what we preconceived, but especially when you have amazing actors, it's just so I don't know, so cool to watch those moments unfold, that you're not expecting, and they almost like doing a live performance for you there, and you're the first member of the audience to see it, so it's amazing.
Yes, and I'm always quite jealous when you talk to sort of DOPs who also are operators, because they have a front row seat to the best
Yeah,
show on earth, because
yeah,
you're just getting take after take, and it's like having a private theatre performance.
yeah. It is amazing. It's such a privilege.
And also when you have people that are incredible performers and they're having a lot of fun, it's just, yeah, I guess again, as I said, very jealous.
Yes, yes. It is. To be honest, I always say that when you are in those moments, like I'm an anxious person. I'm always all the time thinking about 200 things, and my mind never stops. And the only moment in my life that actually everything else just disappears and I'm 100% focused on what's happening is when the camera is rolling. And then I don't know what magic happens there, and that's probably the reason I keep doing what I do because it's just like I just want to have that feelings again and again. But whenever the camera is rolling, my mind is 100% focus on what's happening in front of the camera, or what's supposed to be happening, and it's just amazing actually to be able to feel that and have that level of focus, especially nowadays when it's just so easy to have distractions.
And as well, like when you're on set, there's probably so much that you need to think about, and especially if like the day's running away from you and you only have a certain amount of days to shoot in or actor availability, that creates a whole different level of pressure as well. But as you said, as soon as you're on set with the camera rolling and you're in the zone, that must be like a really nice, like what was it, like a feeling of like, you're like levitating and you're just there in the
Yeah.
zone and like knocking it
Yes.
out.
It's totally. I feel like it's almost like transcendental meditation, almost like you actually just go to another place, and it's really rare. I don't know, maybe that's what musicians feel when they're playing, or like I don't, I have no idea, or like sportists when they're like also on a match or something, but like it's for us, I feel like, at least for me, that moment is the moment that everything just like transcends, and you just leave that thing. And even as you said, like even the little worries that you might have on the moment, because you are actually like thinking about ahead and the next shot, whatever, whenever like that thing is happening and the actors are performing, and there, like trying to catch the whatever's happening, everything else goes away. As soon as it cuts, then everything comes back, and you're thinking about the next shot, that the light is falling, whatever. But on the moment the camera is rolling, like everything just disappears for a while.
Yeah, and I guess as well when you're capturing something like somebody's life and beauty of people's life and what they see in it, then that probably makes everything so different as well.
It does. Yeah, and I feel like connecting with the story also makes a huge difference. I feel like I said that before, like it's really easy to make the mistake of, because we need to work, we need to pay the bills and etc. And there's not that many opportunities where you actually love the script and really can connect to it. But having the privilege of working on a story that not only you connect on a personal level, but that's like that. It's a life unfolding in front of you. It's just like it's also a privilege, and the more I can do that in my life, the better I'm sure my work's gonna be.
I guess when you connect to a script as well, it probably opens up a whole different sort of possibilities of what you want to do and what you want to think, and then
Totally.
maybe like I don't want to say questions, but like it like kind of makes you reevaluate or think about what you're doing with your life and what how you can capture somebody else's life and how do you want to do it in a certain way that it's like people are watching it like a fly on the wall, or is it going to be sort of more of a naturalistic, and especially in that point of view of someone like following someone in that journey, and especially with so much change that happens within the story, and not just in their life but the life around them.
Yeah. It is, yeah. I mean, it's first of all much easier to make all the choices on set, even knowing what lens to choose or how to light it when you know what the character is feeling, and when you connect, that's so much easier. And then it's what you said, like you look back into your own life and you see a journey which was a bit like the movie is like basically Robert's whole life and everything he goes through, and I often saw myself like comparing myself to him, or even like there was some scenes that I was just like listening to guys talk by on the cut by the campfire, for example. I was just like listening to those conversations, and even though I have read them on script, but when I was like there living the moment while like Will Macy was saying those lines, and then suddenly it just felt completely different, you know. Then I was actually absorbing those lines and that wisdom, and thinking about life, and thinking about like how there's a conversation when they're talking about like work and what was next, and like not knowing that feeling of the job, and it's just like it just goes really deep into your own life experience. And then it's funny how that whole movie affected me in a way that some things are just like coincidence, and but I always felt connected to this with the story. I always felt like Robert's life is a lot like mine. And then suddenly, like 6 months after we wrapped the movie, I moved to a new house, and my new house is right next to the train tracks, so I'm constantly hearing the train all the time while I'm sleeping, so basically having train dreams also. And it's just so funny how like some things are coincidence, but at the same time it just makes you question and be more think deeper about the stuff and the story you shot, basically.
I think as well, like when you're, I can imagine like, correct me if I'm wrong, like a life as a cinematographer is probably quite similar to a logger because you're jumping from project to project, place to place. You're probably working with similar people, different people, and you're constantly sort of doing the work. And you know, instead of cutting down trees, you're just cutting scenes and from your day to make sure
Yeah,
that to not I shouldn't say cutting, capturing scenes each day. So I can see that like quite a lot of similarities between that.
it is the
Um,
same life. Yeah, it's it's as you said, like we go for work several months away from our house and our families, and often places that we never been before, with people that we never saw before, that we might never see again. And it is a constant struggle to feel like you belong to anywhere, because you are always away, and then when you come back home you don't really feel connected to your place, and you don't feel like necessarily you belong and you know what to do when you're back. So it is, I often say that it is a lot like a cinematographer's life or a filmmaker's life. But I never thought about what you just said about like the way of the job, and like even the word like cutting, and that's interesting also.
Yeah, and I think sort of going back to the film itself and the logging scenes and being out there in the woods, because you're out there in the elements and you're capturing these moments, and it feels like in a way when you're watching it, like there's always you can see that there's a lack of health and safety when these guys are working, which is understandable at that time. But I can imagine behind the camera, the poor health and safety and insurance people are probably ripping their hair out when they see someone climbing up the tree. And obviously you got stunts who probably have rigged them up with something as well. But as a cinematographer, how do you capture those moments, and how do you want to make those look as authentic as possible?
Yeah, that's the thing, no. I mean, coming, obviously, I feel like things are obviously done in a very different way. Like, first of all, the first thing you do every morning is a safety meeting, and you have stunts, and everything has been assessed before you do it, and etc., etc., etc. So nothing like that is really spontaneous. You don't have just people cutting trees and climbing and whatever, and just capturing it in a movie like this. I've been in situations in my life before, either shooting documentaries or movies in other countries that don't have necessarily the same strict rules as the US has. And I capture things that were a bit more spontaneous and probably more dangerous also, and more inconsequent. But that's a tricky challenge, you know, how to feel like everything is spontaneous. That like there's not that's not stunt, that's not like someone harnessed, that there's not a lot of people just watching to see if everything's gonna be fine, etc. It's a tricky challenge, and I feel like that's why doing whatever I can do to make it feel as real as possible and as naturalistic as possible can help. Because one thing is, okay, there is already elements of the whole thing that are not natural, right? You have someone that is actually from today wearing clothes from 100 years ago, and there's that safety meeting, and there's a stunt, and that's whatever. There's so many elements already that are kind of fake, that if I can try to at least have less of that, if I can not then have suddenly artificial light or whatever, you know, like, so I feel like it's all comes back to what I can do on my side to try to ground it back, even with like the camera movement. Okay, how can we do these feel natural? So with the camera, and does it feel like suddenly, okay, oh, let's make, we are aware suddenly that we have a camera here, that we have a light here. Okay, this is a movie, you know. So I feel like the more we can strip it down to go back to that spontaneity, the better. But it's a constant struggle, I think.
Yeah, and again, you would like it to be as safe as possible, but then also you want it to look as authentic and as cool as possible, right? There's always going to be that sort of
Definitely, I feel like it needs
back
to
and
be
forth.
safe. No one wants to be in danger, or to endanger anyone. So I feel like I think that's not the question here. I think the question is how to then be authentic, knowing that it needs to be safe.
Yeah, putting basically everything into practice and making sure that it is safe. And also the fact is that there's even times we've mounted the camera on a falling tree or
Yeah.
even on a plane, and those shots look incredible and look so cool. But I can imagine it's just like somebody standing there looking at the monitor, being like, their heart is in their mouth, being like, please, please, please don't fall the other way, please don't fall the other way. And it's like, we've got it. It's like perfect. All right, let's get it off as soon as possible. It's like, oh, hang on, somebody didn't press record. It's like, got to do it again. And obviously that wouldn't happen, but I could just imagine them sitting there being like, oh my gosh, please don't break.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, because I feel like for the tree falling, for example, we really wanted that shot. We thought it was really important for the movie, because we wanted again nature to be another character in the movie. We wanted to be true nature's POV also sometimes in the movie, and so that was a really good way to basically start the movie. And we just had to assess how to do it, and then that's basically another camera. It's not the main camera we used in the movie. It's basically a cheaper camera that was insurance, that we knew that if an accident happened, that was okay. Obviously no one wants to destroy a camera, but it was put together in a way that if the worst comes to worst, it's fine. Like we are prepared for it somehow. And then obviously it's a lot of planning and making sure again and again that the camera is indeed rolling and having a backup. And if that shot doesn't work, we're gonna make it work with something else. And I think also just making sure that all the possible accidents that can happen are not going to involve any people. It's just a camera, so just like backing everybody and enough so that nothing can go wrong with anyone, and the maximum that's going to happen right here is to lose a camera. So I feel like it is a lot of also preparation just to make sure you have the right tools and that you can what you can spare if something goes wrong. And I think it's definitely worth to try. And I feel like I'm glad we did that shot. For example, I just don't now that we have it, I don't see it any other way. So I'm glad. The same thing with the plane.
Yeah, and I think as well, you kind of you can, as an audience, you kind of experience how a tree falls, especially in like woods. In, I think this day and age where you can have stuff with VFX and show that like a tree falling, but once you have the camera there, you can kind of feel the force and actually feel, wow, like when a tree falls, is some serious damage to it. It's the same when you see,
Yeah.
there's a moment I think they talk about like 99 times out of 100, they could do it correct and it's fine. But then at one time, something goes wrong, it will be
Mhm.
really bad. And then you see the logs roll down the hill, and it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, pure destruction.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the thing though. Like I feel like especially on a era that we're living right now with AI and everything that's happening, I feel like it's just so good also to have been part of a movie that is so human made. Like it is very handcrafted, and especially on the story that we were telling and trying to show power of nature and the way nature affects us and the way that we are affecting nature, and because of that nature is affecting us back, and destruction, and how everything that we need to survive can also kill us with fire, for example, or the trees that you use them but then suddenly they can roll down on you, etc. So there's so many dualities to all of those elements that we just wanted to make sure that the movie paid homage to it and didn't feel like we are suddenly in a fake forest shooting, a movie about that. Like it just didn't make any sense. And obviously we have the effects in the movie, and we have stuff, but it's always very, relying the scene to that. I feel like they did an amazing job with the VFX, and I call it the invisible VFX, which is, in my opinion, the good one because you don't see it's there. And I think they did an amazing job with that. But it's basically just to enhance things and to make sure you have everything you need. Like back then the trees were much bigger than we can find now, basically because all the trees that were as big as the ones they had were cut. So there's not a lot of ancient trees anymore. So okay, how do we do it? And then you start to make those little tweaks with our department or with VFX to make those things possible, but then extracting as much as you can from nature itself and being sure that everything is being handmade, actually.
And you forget about that as well because they even mention it in the film that, oh, and yeah, 100 years they'll plant their own
Mhm.
trees and they will grow in a certain way and
Yeah.
it'll be fine. And it's like, what happens if it's not? And I can imagine that's something that was probably all in everybody's mind a little bit when they was like um, doing location scouting and then looking and then doing your recce's and thinking, I was expecting these
Oh,
trees to be a lot wider.
yeah, the pictures we were seeing from the time, I mean, from 1920s, whatever, and the loggings is just amazing. Like the size of the trees, you would see pictures of like there's that scene in the movie that there's the guys kind of like hanging from the tree, and one guy isn't like laying down inside the tree. That's basically because we saw a picture with of the time of the guys doing that, and that tree was huge. We couldn't find a tree like that at all. So that specifically tree is built by Alex, the production designer, did an amazing job with that tree, and then just like incremented with VFX. But it's like those things that like whenever we were scouting, we were just seeing, okay, that size of a tree doesn't exist anymore. There's like, yeah, like in the movie, people that would build a house inside a tree, like those trees were massive, massive, massive. And it's just so sad actually to then go to into those forests, and even the most untouched forest that we went that actually protected areas now for the good, are not. I mean, they are impressive and they are magical, and I say that all the time. Like when you go to a place like that, you even feel different. But like when you compare to the pictures of the time, is it's not even half of it. So it is really sad actually.
Yeah, and it's probably, I wouldn't say like disappointing, but it must feel a little bit sort of like underwhelming when you see it in your what's it called, like these pictures, but then you go there and it doesn't look the same, and it must create a sort of, you need to be a bit more creative in the way that you're gonna
Yes.
capture it because you need to basically do movie magic to emphasize the size of it a bit more.
Yeah, and then you go back to like we went back to like force perspective, like old ways that still work. And but I feel like it is disappointing for both things, first of all because like you're seeing a reference and you're not really able to find what you referencing, but also as humans, like just like, oh my god, look what we're doing, like everything, it is really different and it's all our fault, and it's fucked up.
And I just want to pick up at a point as well because you're mentioning about going into these sort of more these areas that are protected, and as a film crew there could be a big footprint with trucks, trailers, uh, equipment, and also the number of people that are going to be on set, actors, and so on and so forth. Um, as a DOP, how do you go about having you and your team be respectful to the areas and making sure that you don't damage the ecosystem that has been created there?
Well, on the protected areas that we've been, there was a lot of rules, not only imposed by the place itself, and the guards or whatever, but also by the producers, and everybody was really respectful of that. I think, especially because when you go to a place like that, I don't even think that you especially when you work in a movie like that and talking about that, I don't even think you can imagine of not being respectful, because it's just like it just feels so different, and it feels and looks so special that this is not even a question not to be. So whenever we shot on those locations, we have like really strict rules on what we could bring, and basically that was just like a camera and the amount of people that could be inside, and okay, and then if it's a horse just on this line and whatever, things that wouldn't damage at all. So all those rules were given to us by the authorities or whatever you call them, but also in haste by production, and everybody just really followed them. And yeah, it was a teamwork to just be 100% respectful, which was, I mean, again, I think it's good for all possible reasons, like when you have a smaller footprint, goes back to the way we even wanted to shoot inside a cabin or anywhere else in the movie. You have so much freedom with a smaller footprint, because then you can suddenly move the camera anywhere you want. You can pan around, you can tilt up and down, and there's not a truck there's not like 200 C stands, there's not whatever, and you can actually inhabit that place and show the greatness and let the actors also move around. So I feel like it's just beneficial.
Yeah, and I guess as well, if you have less people, you have more open space to shoot in, so you can point the camera in one direction and cover it
Mm-hmm.
rather than worry about someone accidentally stepping in or being like, oh, we need maybe VFX to just get rid
Mm-hmm.
of them on the
Yeah.
side there.
Yes, totally. And I feel like also you move faster in the end, because then you don't need to, when you're doing the reverse and looking the other way, then you don't need to wait for the whole crew to move back to the other way, and then need to shift all the line. Like everything is also more fluid. So it's actually easier to inhabit those places and also to feel it. I feel like going back to, I think one of the first questions of the artificial versus the spontaneous is like, I feel like if you don't have a lot of those things around, it's probably easier even for the actors to actually be able to leave that and pretend they're living on the 1920s on that forest that isn't touched, that actually it is in the middle of nowhere and there's not a lot of people around. So I feel like it's just trying to create a environment that also brings back that spontaneity.
Yeah, 100%. And also being in like an area where you know that you probably have such limited time, it's like we can get what we want, but then also let's play around with what's going on and
Totally.
make it special.
Yeah.
I've got just two more questions before we wrap up. For my penultimate question, with the film being what's called a period piece, I can imagine there's always like certain traps that you need to fall into. So, for example, like the way certain things will be lit. So when we're inside a cabin, for example, or they're sitting by a fire, you're not really going to think about how they're going to be lit by sort of a campfire or the light streaming through the windows. How do you go about making sure that stuff like that is grounded as much as possible, because you want that naturalistic look, but then also you want to make sure that you've got your scene lit correctly?
I think it's going back to actually what would have happened at the time. I think like in any movie, what I'm always trying to think, especially if you want to be as naturalistic as possible, is like, okay, how the lighting would actually work in this place, like with, I don't know, to just give a random thing, like not even a period, but a scene about a person waking up in the middle of the night and go into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Often in movies, you see then suddenly there is a moonlight shining through, and the whole light, how it lit by the moonlight, and like it feels like the whole movie is like set in one day when there's a full moon, and etc. And then you actually like using an artifact somehow to light it. But then what would actually happen? I don't know. Person would just go in the dark, and then you would see her in front of, if it's that person knows well their house, and then you see them opening the fridge and there's a light inside the fridge and that's all you see, or the person would just turn on the lights and slowly, just like every new place they enter, they're gonna turn on the lights and that's what you're gonna see, whatever. So it's just like, okay, what would have been back then in Train Dreams, for example? It's like 1920s or whatever it is, just candles and oil lamps and gas lamps. So let's just use that. And if the character is moving through a, a dark area, like that scene where he sees the girl in the middle of the night outside, okay, how are we gonna see? Okay, the same way that he would have seen her, he would bring a lamp. If he's going outside of his house in the middle of the night, he would probably bring a lamp to actually be able to see anything. So let's just do that. And then you obviously need actors that are willing to and want also that. And then they are basically lighting the scene the same way they would, which I think is great, because in order for Joe to be able to actually see the person he's interacting to in the scene, he needs to be carrying that and actually lighting himself what he wants to see. And I feel like that just grounds it so much, and that makes everything realistic. He's not holding a lamp that is actually not lighting at all, and the light is coming from outside, and that lamp is just like a prop, like, and he's not basically even moving. So I feel like it's a combination of trying to make everything again grounded and it's realistic, and going back to what is that would actually happen here, instead of just looking back at like older movies or references or whatever to figure out how other people did it, and maybe just try to figure out how those characters would actually do it.
Yeah, and I guess as well, like, it's probably, again, as a cinematographer, it's like the challenge of it. And as you said, like, will they have a lantern that's going to be a prop? And then if that's going to be a prop, how is that going to affect them in the scenes? Or do we just leave it as it is? And it's probably the stuff that you're thinking about constantly on set, and then trying to sort of not catch up, but like make sure you've got it correct, so that whatever you're thinking about is going to be happening in that scene, and make sure that it looks correct as well. And you're right as well when you're saying, like, it's not just in period pieces, but if you've got a contemporary film and somebody goes in the kitchen at night and doesn't turn on the light, it's like, is there gonna be moonlight? Is there gonna be moonlight, or is it gonna be a cloudy night? Who's gonna say anything? And then what about if they've got like a, what's it called, security light that goes on and off every so often because a cat walks past or something like that?
Yeah, I'm always trying to find those motivations that are a bit more like real to even my life. How many times I went to the kitchen in the middle of the night and I could see anything because of the moonlight? Probably never, at least in the big city. Maybe when I was in the middle of nowhere with the clearest sky ever for one day in the month, yes, but for everything else, not. So, okay, what would I have done? And nowadays, I use my the torch on my phone a lot to move around. Like, okay, then I just turn it on and I see what I need to see, and I turn it off. And so I'm always trying to think what would I do as just a person inhabiting this space.
Yeah, and that's a very good point as well. Like, we're so used to probably having lights on our phone rather than, what's it called, than sort of being used to the sort of darkness. But then also you go in the dark and it's just, you start seeing stuff, and it can creep you out. You see a plant pot and you think it's like a person. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And just to hit you up with my final question, what was your favorite scene to shoot?
I think all those little improvised moments with Joe and Felicity in the cabin were just so magical because of that. Because then suddenly I wasn't a spectator there, also seeing things unfold and just like following with the camera. And sometimes we would shoot for like half an hour nonstop, just following around and trying to gather everything that we could in that little time. And there's so many magical moments of that came from those scenes that ended up in the movie, and sometimes it's just like 10 seconds or a shot, and some became a bigger scene. And whenever I was watching that, I was like, okay, that was cool, and kind of like feeling the magic again.
Yeah, and I guess as well, like even though you captured half an hour of it at the time, it's probably a little bit annoying only seeing 10 seconds of it in the film. But at least you know that, like, you know what, I had the best half hour of my of like on the shoot, doing those scenes because it's just a small acting masterclass.
Thank you. uh, yeah, I just love it. I love those moments. I love doing those things. I feel like also that's the reason I love to watch them back. It's just like the memories coming back to me of like having a good time.
Yes, and especially if it's like, I can imagine that like you get like a different sort of feel to it because you also feel like, oh, I remember we had what we had for lunch that day, and then everything was just flowing and
Yeah.
people were just hitting their marks perfectly, and it was just, yeah, it was incredible.
Yes.
Adolfo, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks for the questions.
No, thank you for answering them. Train Dreams is streaming now on Netflix. Go out and watch Adolfo and his team's beautiful work. Thank you again.
Thank you. And please, if you do watch it on Netflix, turn off the motion settings you have on your TV. But if not, just watch it regardless. It's what matters the most.
Thank you again. You take care and bye bye.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.